my biggest fear is fire. Because we're driving so close, the cars are hitting at such a high impact that, we have fuel in this car. The car could explode at any time.
That's crazy.
I just want to be historic. First female to podium, first female to get a championship in pro spec, first female to go pro. When you have the confidence, when you show up to the line, your chances of having a better result that day is so much better. But as soon as that's taken away from you, you're just like, okay, I feel like I'm starting at square one again. There is definitely fear that's instilled in me. We're driving on such a fine margin that I'm getting so close to the wall that it could go bad so quickly.
What's up, guys? I'm Leticia Bufoni. As a professional skateboarder and a racing driver, I'm used to taking risks. In this new podcast and video series, I'm meeting people from around the world who shares the same mindset. I'm going to find out what drives them and look deeper into the relationship between performance and passion. This is the Team Ignition Show. What's up, guys? I'm Leticia Bufoni, and I'm so excited to welcome to the Team Ignition Show professional race car driver, Amanda Sorensen.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.
My name is Amanda Sorensen. I am a professional race car driver. I compete in Formula Drift as well as many other forms of motorsports. I started drifting at a young age. It was a family hobby. Drifting on a simple term is just a car sliding sideways. Drifting on a complicated term in the motorsports industry is controlled chaos. When I think of career highlights, my most recent, first female to podium in Formula Drift.
First of all, do you remember how we met?
In Arizona.
Yeah.
Phoenix. And I was like, this crazy girl thinks she can drive a race car?
So I started racing nitro, and then a few stops later, then you show up and you start racing nitro too. And
I wasn't even supposed to be racing that weekend, but I just ended up hopping in the car because they had an extra car. That was a good time, though.
Nice. That was definitely fun. How did you get into motorsports?
Backstory. So obviously it's a family hobby. My dad was involved in racing, and he just kind of did it as a family.
He was racing too?
Yeah, my dad used to race off-road trucks. And in the process of him racing off-road trucks, he was developing his own parts and shocks, and we had this tiny little shop that we had at our house. And I just remember Brandon, my brother, we would go and hang out in the shop with my dad. But from there, it was kind of just like a family hobby. Brandon and I were driving home from Utah, actually, to Las Vegas, and you passed by the Vegas Motor Speedway, and there was a go-kart race going on, and my dad was like, oh, let's go check it out. We went, and this family that was there had extra go-karts and offered Brandon and I to go into their karts, and it was more about Brandon at the time, actually. They were like, oh, Brandon, go drive the car. And Brandon was like, you know how Brandon is. Very okay, maybe I'll try it. But Brandon was like, no way, I'm not doing it. And I was being the older sister, knowing, I just wanted to have that influence. Okay, well, I guess I'll try it. So I went out there, drove a few laps in the go-kart, and Brandon came out, followed me around the track, and from there, the rest is history.
That's amazing. I met your dad, and it's so amazing how much he loves racing. He'll work on the go-karts nonstop. He'll be at the track doing everything. He's the coolest dad ever.
Definitely, yeah.
Last night, when we were talking to him, he was like, do I need to come over and bring a car?
Yeah.
He loves it, and it's amazing to have, all the support from your family.
For sure.
Because, when I started skating, at first I didn't have the support from my family, and it was so hard. And my career didn't take off until my dad was really, into it and supporting me. So it's very nice to see how your family just.
I think it's always you have to establish those. You have to get through the hard times because it can be very, very hard, especially for us. In the beginning, my dad was always in charge of everything. My mom always had a say in everything, and at the turning point where we were going from it being a family hobby, and Brandon and I made the choice to choose it as a career path, we had to learn how to fire our parents, which is the hardest thing ever. And I know My dad is very emotionally connected to the sport. So how do I tell him, I want you to be more on the strategy side rather than the executing side. Like, let me be the face and execute some choices. And there was a hard transition because, obviously at the end of the day, they have to put the trust in you as the kid that you're going to have the discipline and make the choices that they want you to make.
So you're the first woman to ever pod in a Formula Drift. How does it feel?
Honestly, I still have so much more to accomplish, I just am at the early stage of my drifting career. I'm in the pro spec class, which is one level below the elites of all elites in, the whole world. So Formula Drift Pro class is my end goal. No female is driving in that class or has ever driven in that class.
And how do you get to that?
I have to podium. I have to finish top 3 in the championship in the pro spec class. So this year I finished 5th in the championship.
Oh my God.
I almost was 3rd in the championship.
So close.
I threw it away in Utah for my last round.
So close.
But yeah, so my goal is to be the first female in pro. But also I just want to be historic. I want to leave my name, kind of pave my path. And for me, it's not even about necessarily the fame or paving the path. It's just I just want to go drive with my brother. I want to go drive with all the pro drivers and be just as good as them. There's that fire in me that's I want to do things where they're watching me and they're like, wow, how did she pull that off? And it's similar to when I watch Brandon drive. I'm like, oh my gosh, how did he do that? But it takes so much confidence, so much seat time, and it's a timely thing. I could easily just jump to the pro ranks right now. I've already been qualified to go pro. But I want to be historic and I want to leave my name in history, First female to podium, first female to get a championship in pro spec, first female to go pro, and continue working for that.
Nice. So how do you handle the pressure though? Being the only woman on the team, having your brother, which is really good, and having to perform in front of a lot of people.
Honestly, it's one of those things where it's trial and error. I'm still trying to figure it out. We have conversations about this all the time. How do we manage the emotions behind what we do, I don't know. What about you? How do you handle the pressure?
I just don't. I just go
it's
for
some
it.
days you have good days and some days you don't. You're like, wow, did I do something different this morning or what happened there?
Yeah, I was just talking about it the other day. I've been competing skateboarding for 20 years, but I still get super nervous before a competition and it doesn't change. I don't know. Racing, it's even worse.
Yeah.
Because I'm new to it and I don't really know what I'm doing. So I'm I also I put a lot of pressure on myself. I
100%.
always I want to perform good every time, even though I'm new to it and I'm still learning. I just put a lot of pressure on myself and sometimes it's hard.
I agree. And I definitely would have to say it's one of those things where winning is, I've found it's a confidence thing. When you have the confidence, when you show up to the line, your chances of having a better result that day is so much better. When you have that winning streak, and it just makes the next win so much easier. But as soon as that's taken away from you, it could be one bad play and you're just okay, I feel I'm starting at square one again.
Yeah, it makes sense. What are the risks in drifting?
Well, with drifting, there is a lot of risks, right? Drifting, you're literally driving the car at its maximum potential. When you watch a drift competition, you'll see that there's outside zones and inside clipping points, and the goal is to get the car as close as you can to that clipping point without crashing and maintaining line, angle, and style.
Which is a wall, right?
Which is a wall. So, for example, a track that we drive at is Irwindale Speedway. We enter at, 80 to 95 miles an hour in a straight line, brake traction, and get the car, out of control. And then while maintaining just slight control, going up and getting close to this K-rail, and we're doing passing the K-rail 80, 90 miles an hour, and then we transition back the other way, and there's an inside clipping point. We want to get the front of our car as close as we can to the clipping point, and then we transition back the other way, and we get the rear of the car so close into this K-rail that we're driving on such a fine margin that I'm getting so close to the wall that it could go bad so quickly. So the risks that you're taking there is, how deep can I drive this car into the zone? Where are my limits? I'm sure with you going into competition, you are like, okay, there's this big trick. The chances of me actually being able to maneuver and do what I need to do is a lot harder than doing it if it were an easy trick. So at the pro level of competition, we're maneuvering these cars in these, very difficult ways that there's so much risk that we're taking that the crash could happen so quickly.
Yeah, from outside and watching, I've been to many drift competition. It looks fast. You guys are going really fast, but also like you guys are going sideways. So we're like, yeah, if they crash, nothing's gonna happen, but it does happen, right?
Yeah, I mean, also for me, I would have to say like my biggest fear is fire. We don't think about that a lot, but driving the car so close to another car, the chances of me just hitting the wall by myself is very slim. More than likely, if I crash, the other car is going to crash with me. So automatically, that just adds to the damage. But because we're driving so close, the cars are hitting at such a high impact that, we have fuel in this car. The car could explode at any time.
That's crazy.
Fire is so common. But it's like, I actually just had a fire recently. But the thing about drifting too is you have tire smoke. So how do I know the difference between tire smoke and fire? So I can be a little paranoid at times with that.
I would. I don't know the difference. My car can be on fire and I'm like, oh, it's just a tire.
It's just the tire smoke. I tell myself all the time.
Have you ever had any like bad crash in drifting?
Honestly, I've been pretty lucky with drifting. Because like I said, the cars are driving so closely to each other. We've recently witnessed a car flip over by driving over the other car.
Wow.
So he actually rolled his drift car, which is not very common. In Irwindale also last year, a car, hit the wall and drove up the side of the wall and ended up going back down. So the driver was, his face was literally near the ground because it was driving on the driver's side down.
It was like doing a grind.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember seeing that. That was crazy.
So, there's always that risk.
Who was that? James Dean?
James Dean, yeah.
Crazy. That was insane. You never got hurt drifting?
No. I would say, obviously we have all of our safety that we...
I don't know why I'm skating. I get hurt all the time skating. So like when I'm racing the endurance race, I get really scared because there's 3 classes racing together all at the same time. And there's really fast cars. And also there's pro drivers like Rubinho Barrichello racing against us. And I get so scared because I know there's going to be cars passing me from like both sides, like on a turn. And you never know what's going to happen. There's like 40 cars out there racing together. Do you ever feel like that? Do you ever get scared?
Yeah, I definitely would have to say it's crazy because being involved in motorsports my whole life, I look back and I'm like, when I was younger, there was no, not even an ounce of fear in my driving. And as I've gotten older and I've seen things, I've experienced things, you have those moments where you think about, those flashbacks or, and there is definitely fear that's instilled in me, for sure. I think also, as an athlete, when you take the time off and you don't focus on things and you're not challenging yourself daily, it's harder to overcome those things. No different than getting in a cold plunge for me, right? I love cold plunging. I know you'll never cold plunge in your life.
I don't know
you literally hate the cold.
I hate the cold.
I know. But it's one of those things where, you just kind of have to remind yourself, you have to challenge yourself every day. And having the confidence to go and do something is hard, But when you walk in the room and you're confident, it tends to make the night way easier, right? When you show up to the track and you're confident, the event goes by so much smoother. So preparing yourself for the weekend or preparing yourself for the event is kind of key in ensuring that you don't run into those unknowns. It makes the pressure kind of come off your chest a little bit more.
Yeah. And what about if everything's going wrong? I don't know, something happens, your car catches on fire. What do you do?
Yeah, there's definitely those times where you just feel like the world's against you. And it's crazy because you have to remember why you're doing it. And I think you have to remember who you are truly. So for me, I do do it because I enjoy racing. I enjoy drifting. I enjoy just putting the visor down and forgetting about everything.
I get so nervous and scared sometimes because it's all new to me. But you've been doing since you were 5, so you're chilling. Like,
Well,
it's all automatic
thing,
now.
too, is like when you think about it, like it almost looks like the end goal is way farther away, but like you have to remember to get to the end goal, you just need to start by achieving the first goal. And I don't need to go out and drift the whole course perfect when I arrive. I need to go out and focus on what I feel like my biggest disadvantage is, and I'm going to focus on my biggest disadvantage, and then I'm going to start nitpicking at the things that are, maybe not my biggest disadvantage, but like the things that I feel like I can perfect.
So explain to us, like, how is the drifting competition? Because it's not a race. So, like, really explain to us, like, how you guys do it.
So drifting is a judge-based sport. It's a judge-based motorsport. It is judged by line, angle, and style. It's all about technique. It's about being very precise, which makes it the hardest form of motorsport, in my opinion. It's not just on the car. It's very, very driver focused. NASCAR these days is, I'd say, 80% car, 20% driver. Because, the car can only go so fast. But with them, they're trying to go fast. The driver can only do so much in the position that they're in. With drifting, some people go and win, and they can win a weekend, or some people can go win a competition with the lowest budget possible and, the cheapest car there, but their mindset and their mentality that day was perfect. I think kind of can relate to skateboarding. Your skateboard only does so much for you. It's really how you come that day, how prepared you are.
Drifting is very similar to skateboarding.
Yeah, so
when you say style, what that means?
Style is broken down into 2 categories, fluidity and commitment. Fluid, how fluid you are, going from one outside zone to the other outside zone maybe, or transitioning back and forth.
So, like, you gotta be smooth.
Exactly, you have to be fluid. You don't want to be bubbly. Exactly. And the judges, when they're judging your style, right, say you have, every time you make a small adjustment in the zone, you're deducted points. So the goal is to enter into the zone, maintain your angle and style and your line, and not make any adjustments. The commitment comes down to how committed are you going into that turn?
They can see it all,
and
right?
They can see everything. They can see when I push the front brake. They can see when I'm pulling the handbrake.
Is that the lights in front of the car?
Yeah. So we have these accelerometer. We have these lights that read the G's. So the G force of the car going forward and backwards. If I hit the brake, you'll see the decel light come on. We're only allowed to decel on certain parts of the track. So that means I'm only allowed to push the brakes on certain parts of the track. It's very, very much like any other judge-based sport. It kind of gets really fine into what they define what good drifting is. But the reason why they're so particular about line, angle, and style is because once you do your qualifying run and you show them how you can perform on the track maintaining line, angle, and style, we go into a bracket-style competition. And I'll be paired up with another driver. They take only 32 drivers go into the bracket-style competition, and we have about 50-plus drivers in our field. So that means, 20 drivers go home before they even make it to competition.
Wow.
Which is crazy. Like, their weekend can be over so quick.
How many laps? 2 laps for the bracket?
When you go into the bracket-style competition, you have a lead run and you have a follow run. The lead run, the driver is performing the track how the judge is asked. The chase driver in the follow position has to mirror what the lead driver's doing.
So even though he does something wrong, you just gotta follow.
You just gotta follow. And that's where you don't want to react to the lead driver. You want to anticipate what the lead driver's gonna do. You have to really know your competition. There's so many things about drifting that makes it unique. And the one thing is, I can make the car do one thing so many different ways. For example, I could pull the e-brake and get the car to brake traction. I could hit the gas to get the car to brake traction. I could clutch kick. So knowing your competition is so important because when I go battle the lead driver, I want to be able to do what he's doing. I want to know if he is going to do an initiation where he just makes one small movement and goes in and initiates. Or if he does like what we would call Scandinavian flick, where you kind of flick it this way, then you flick it up, right? So you have to anticipate what the lead driver is going to do. I have a spotter in my ear while I am competing.
Which is your brother.
Yes, unfortunately for me, my brother gets the spot for me, so coaches me through all of it. But the spotter's telling me, this guy's going to initiate this way. He's probably going to decel a lot here. And so I take the feedback that my spotter gives me, and I apply it to my driving. Each driver drives different. So in the bracket style competition, from top 32, 16 advance, 16 go home. And then the main show starts. So you don't even get to the main show until you're, top 16.
Wow.
You get to opening ceremonies once you're in top 16. For me, I could have a bad weekend. Like, I fly my whole entire team across the United States to a race, and then I mess up in my top 32 and I don't even make it to the main show. It's so devastating.
You
but
go home on the first day.
Exactly, right?
Wow.
It's crazy. So from top 16, you work your way up top 8, top 4, and then finals to the podium. So obviously, lead driver doing a lead and then swapping. And now you guys switch positions where the lead driver goes into the chase position and you perform the same thing. And then it's not up to anybody else except for the 3 people behind the judging booth saying you advance or you don't.
And you can just choose their favorite.
There's politics involved for sure.
It's like skateboarding. They always choose their favorite, like surfing.
Definitely. It's like sometimes, it's like, did you do that for the story or did you do that because that's what should have happened? In drifting, we have to perfect what we do to a T. So there's that repetition. There's the consistency. And, it's not easy to get things perfect right away. It's crazy because when you're sitting at the line and everybody's walking around with your last name on the back of their shirts, you feel like there's more than just one job at hand. You really have to learn how to adapt quickly on the spot with drifting. How do I keep this enthusiasm going? Especially when you're just drained.
Tell us about like the whole behind the scenes that people don't get to see it, they just think you look good and you race.
I know, right? Imagine if it was that easy.
Right?
All we did was just show up and perform.
People just think you do the hair flip and race.
Yeah.
But yeah, people don't really know the behind the scenes. And I know because we're close and we talk about all the time. And it's so amazing to see how much you work to make your racing career happen.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that's cool about motorsports in general, right? There's a lot of like-minded individuals around, a lot of like-minded families around. Motorsports teaches you how to do business, how to do marketing, how to talk to the media. There's so much that goes into it. And for me, I really gravitated towards the business side. Fortunately, Brandon and I were very good at working together, We make a good duo. He's able to manage the cars and manage the team. As well as perfect the driving side of things to where I can go and do the business side of things. Without Brandon, I wouldn't be able to do what I do. But yeah, there's a lot of things, and I wouldn't be involved in the sponsorship or the marketing or the personal brand building if it wasn't for my mom and my dad always pushing me to learn, like, okay, you don't have a marketing manager, but you have this opportunity. What are you going to do with it? For me, I'm now sponsored by the United States Air Force with, I'd say, the biggest deal in Formula Drift. And I'm, happy to say that because I put the time and the effort into learning what do they want when I'm negotiating a marketing deal. Read the books, did the YouTube search, and understood how to do that. But a lot of the things that I've self-taught myself have translated into the real world.
Which is like really hard because I know a lot of athletes that all they do, they just practice and compete. They don't want to do anything else. They don't want to be in the behind the scenes. They don't want to, they don't want to do emails.
Yeah, and I think it's crazy because in this day and age, personal branding is so important.
Obviously, and you do that really well.
Thank you. Obviously, there is a part of me where I don't necessarily want to be just focusing on the business side. I want to be perfecting my driving. I want to be able to perform on track. And, you see some of these drivers and they put hours and hours and hours into perfecting their driving. But I can't show up to the track without the money. Yeah. So, there's obviously a priority that comes into play, and it's been a timely thing. With the support around me, I've been able to kind of shift some tasks off on some other people. So I can focus more on the driving, and I think that really showed this year. It's crazy because when you're sitting at the line and everybody's walking around with your last name on the back of their shirts, you feel like there's more than just one job at hand. And, my team represents me. When they're maybe goofing off over in the hot pits, it's like I'm sitting there and I'm supposed to be focusing on what I'm driving, but I'm not focused on that because, at the end of the day, it's still my public image.
Yep.
So there's a lot that, a lot of things that have taken a lot of time to perfect on the team side of things in order for me to actually focus on the driving. Sometimes I look at it and I'm like, wow, I wish I was just a higher driver, but I wouldn't change it for anything.
I wanna go back into your karting days. So you start go-karting first. You're racing go-karts when you were like what, 11?
5. I started
5?
racing go-karts.
No
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
So you've been racing your whole life, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. 21 years, I would say. Like, I literally was born at a racetrack.
Wow, that's why you don't want to go anymore, huh? Every time I tell you to come with me, you're like,
I know. You're always calling me, being like, oh, let's go. And I'm like, okay.
I don't know. So then after go-karting, you start racing off-road.
Yep. We made a huge transition because you're going from asphalt to dirt. And on asphalt, the goal is you always have traction on asphalt. Off-road racing is a good pivoting point because I started in go-kart racing, which is, full traction. You're maintaining traction the whole time. Every time you don't have traction, you're doing something wrong. Off-road racing, you're in the dirt, you have less traction, you learn how to adapt when the car gets sideways. It's like when you're racing your Can-Ams, you hit the jump and you land and you go around the turn in nitrocross. Similar concept, but then once you get into drifting, it's like a step farther. There is no traction, but we're trying to dial in so much grip that I can actually control the car while being out of control, so say. But it's a good pivoting point. So starting with the go-kart racing stuff, it's more traction-based. And then off-road, you are driving in a straight line, but you're also breaking traction at the same time.
Got it. Then you start racing trophy trucks.
So background story, like we started racing in go-karts. Brandon and I literally went head-to-head so much that like I always had friendly competition on the track.
No matter who's winning.
Come on now. Like, for real, are you even going to ask that question?
I don't know. He's good. He's
He is
fast.
very good, for sure. I do have more championships. Brandon has more podiums, so we can leave it at that.
Okay.
Yeah, we have our days. But I always had a friendly competition on the track. And Brandon and I started racing West Coast in go-karting, kind of just traveling up and down with our family, dominating a lot of tracks. Then we set some track records. From there, we started to travel a little bit more outside of our comfort zone, just not only West Coast, but traveling the whole United States and racing go-karts. Once we got to a little bit older of an age where we could enter in the off-road racing scene, we started racing, these little mod carts. It's a modified 450 motor, so it's like a dirt bike motor, inside of a like a small little trophy truck looking thing. And we race short course, but this is similar in the aspect of you're racing against multiple other competitors on a track. You want to be fast, you want to be smooth, you want to be the first person to cross the line. And for me, I actually had a hard concept of it because I didn't understand the concept of shifting. So it has a sequential shifter in it, and you have to shift while you're racing. It has a clutch and everything.
Makes
for me,
everything harder.
So much harder when you have to shift, right? So for me, from going from the automatic to the manual was a little bit hard for me to adapt to. But we raced, from go-karting. Brandon has multiple championships. I had multiple championships. And we were not only just racing one class. Like, we would show up, and you know how my dad is. Like, I'm entered in 2 classes. Brandon's entered in the other 2 classes. And so Brandon and I had one class we raced against each other. And Brandon actually ended up second in the championship, and I believe I was third in the championship. So the class that we raced together, I was, not too happy with that. But outside of that, we both won championships in the other classes. Then we moved into the mod carts, and from mod carts, I never really got a grasp of it, honestly. It was like being thrown in with the sharks. Brandon and I were 12, 13, racing against kids who were 14, 15, 16, and have been doing it for a while. They started in off-road. So I kind of was a little bit slower, and I didn't really love it. But that's when Polaris came out with the side-by-side. And I was like, let's go race side-by-sides. It's automatic. It's not manual. My first year racing a side-by-side, I won the championship in 2016 against all of these dudes, and I was the only female in the class, and I was like, okay, this is kind of empowering. Like, I love this.
That's amazing.
That's when Polaris came out with their side-by-side. It's a UTV, 1,000cc off-road vehicle, and it's four-wheel drive. And we were racing in West Coast. We were racing in 3 different series, California, Arizona, and Utah.
And there's not a women class, right? You're racing against guys.
All men, exactly.
Oh, man.
But for me, it was more just like, I'm out there racing with my brother. I don't care about any other competitor on the track. Like, I'm out there racing with my brother.
Yep. You just want to beat your brother. That's it. That's the mission.
It was just more of like friendly competition, But yeah, so we were racing in the side-by-sides in the short course series. And from there, my dream, I aspired to be like Bryce Menzie, race an all-wheel drive trophy truck for thousands, 1,000 miles, whatever, have the helicopter chasing me. Like, these long endurance races are what I had looked up to. I told my dad, hey, I really want to get into off-road racing, like kind of what you did, because so my dad did that. And I was like, oh, I want to get into what he did. And we bought a trophy truck. I was so pumped. It's a spec trophy truck. It must be
nice. Dad, I want to race off-road. Okay, I'll just get you a trophy truck. Let's go.
So we got a spec trophy truck, and the idea was my brother and I were to race half and half. So Brendan races maybe 150 miles. I race the other 150 if it was like a 300-mile race. But these are longer races that you prepare for, endurance races. Like, you're in the truck for hours on hours, and it's just so much fun. So fun.
It's a lot of work.
Kind of like your opportunity that you had. You went and raced in Baja.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. That was kind of cool.
I raced the 1,000, and the leg I had, it was 300 miles in one day. So it took us 7 hours and 40 minutes to finish.
Oh, that's so much.
Yeah, it was a long race.
What were the things that kind of hit you like blindsided when you were doing the endurance race?
I love every second of it until I saw a really bad crash, and it just, it took me a second to get over it and keep racing because it was really bad. And when we finished, we heard the person that crashed died. So, I just had that on my mind for a long time. And people don't really know what goes in the behind the scenes of off-roading.
Yeah.
Because, we come to a racetrack like this, we see the whole track. We know every turn. We know what we're going to do.
Totally.
We can walk the track. But off-roading, you don't get to see anything.
Yeah.
You just go, and then you have somebody next to you telling you what to do, where to go, where to turn, how many miles. It's a lot. And also, you can really stop and take breaks. You got to go for hours and hours. And sometimes you just got to pee in your pants.
Oh my gosh, yeah. The one thing I love about off-road racing is it's the unknowns. It's like you're racing and I could go drive, the track. I could go drive pre-run a section, which is what we would do. We would go drive, maybe just a few miles of the loop to understand kind of what we're going to be getting ourselves into. But, the rain rut might not be there a week or two prior when I'm pre-running, and then I go and I'm driving, or, this big boulder comes out of nowhere. And these boulders will catch you so blindsided that, you just flat tire. All right, now that adds, 5-10 minutes because you're changing tires. And it's not like you have a team out there to change your tires. You as the driver are driving and doing your task, but your co-driver gets out of the car and changes your tires for you. So
the tire is so big I can even lift. It's almost my size.
Yeah, but that's
and it's not only one day of racing, right? If you're doing the 1,000, the 1,000 was 6 days.
Yeah, it's definitely very draining. But and to carry that mindset all the way through the 6 days, you can be so amped up for the first day, but following that, it's how do I keep this enthusiasm going? Especially when you're just drained.
Yeah, it's physically and mentally exhausting.
Yeah, mentally exhausting. Just seeing, you're not
too,
talking to anyone.
You don't stop. You're
yeah,
it's
exactly.
There's bumps. There's rocks. There's everything. Water. You see it all.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
For me, I would
all
say
the cactus. You're so close to the cactus. the day before I race, one of our drivers, he hit a cactus, and he was like,
Cactus in the race suit.
dude, all over him.
Mhm.
And like, for me, like, I was like, the whole time I was like, I cannot hit a cactus. I cannot hit a cactus. I was so focused.
Yeah, you get paranoid about those things.
Yeah, because it's
sure.
so close and you're going so fast. It's like, oh my God, it's like I can die in any second. For like the 7 hours and 40 minutes I was racing, I was like, I can just die in any second.
Okay, well, why are you thinking about that?
I saw a person die in front of me. Like this car was just upside down. It was just crazy.
No, I understand.
And I was just thinking about it, you know, like it was my first time doing it.
Yeah,
and
agreed, I understand.
I came straight from a Porsche race. I flew from Brazil right after my race to Mexico to race the 1000. I had no practice. I had nothing. I just went straight to the car and started racing.
With the sharks.
It was bad. I was scared.
Now for me, when I made the pivot from off-road racing to drifting, I had this kind of big devastation because in the off-road racing, I really loved the unknown. Mm-hmm. I loved the simple fact of, just kind of embracing the course in the moment and adapting to that. In drifting, we have to perfect what we do to a T. So there's that repetition. Mm-hmm. There's the consistency. And, it's not easy to get things perfect right away. In drifting, because we go through so many tires, I do 2 laps and then I change a set of tires. When I made that transition, I was like, wow, this sucks. Like, I'm used to being on the track forever, and now I have to do 2 laps and then come in and change my tires.
Never enough, huh?
Right? And it's like, I feel like I can never get enough laps. I could go out and do a run, and they're like, oh, like, that was perfect. And I'm like, from the outside, I put it together. But from the inside, I pulled the handbrake at a different time. I pushed the foot brake at a different time. I shifted at a different time. And to build the muscle memory in a consistent repetition is so hard to do when you only have maximum of, say, 12 laps before you go into competition. I'm sure it's similar with you in skating. You get there and you have a certain amount of time prior to practice your run. And it's like, okay.
But in skateboarding, we can just skate as long as we want.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
A good thing
you just have a skateboard.
Like, cars or like racing cars is so difficult because you cannot practice.
It's hard to perfect it.
Like what do you do to practice? Sim?
Exactly, yeah. And that's the thing. How do I dedicate the time to spend 8 hours on a simulator a day? Stare at a computer for 8 hours and let me know how you feel after, and drive the same track over and over again. And it's not like you're driving a track that takes an hour to complete. You're driving a track that takes 30 seconds to complete, and then you're repeating it. It's so mind draining. Like, you literally are just like, I don't want to do this,
What I've been struggling the most, it's the simulator. Like, I was never into computers, video game, and I'm so used to just grab my skateboard and go to the skate park and practice for hours and hours and be ready for a competition. And in racing, you guys don't get to practice. Like, all you do is the simulator. And
if that.
If that, exactly. And like, to me, it's just crazy because like every time I go to a race, I feel like I'm not ready because I didn't practice.
Yeah, agreed. And, the simulator can only do so much for you. You're actually not putting your life on the line when you're driving the simulator. It could crash into the wall at 80 miles an hour and there's no problem.
Nothing happens.
But having the discipline to drive on the simulator is hard. I'm not into video games. I hate staring at the computer. And of course, every time you turn the simulator on, which the simulator is literally a simulation of the seat, the pedals, the handbrake, the shifter. And I wear VR goggles so I can look right and left while I'm drifting, or sometimes I have a 360 screen that goes around me. But, you turn that baby on and it doesn't always work. It's like, software update. You need to update your car. This, that. I'm like, I don't have 2 hours to sit here and do this. So I understand, the only training we really can do is driving on the simulator. Or the other option is to go buy a car. You go buy another car, and this is a practice car, $5,000 drift car that you can just buy. It's like a beater car is what we would call it. But even then, you still have tire budgets that you're going through. $300, $400 of tires for just one day of driving. Fuel, which is, even
and you need a
55.
whole team.
And you need, someone to change your tires. You need someone to make sure the car is set up properly.
You need a truck. You need a trailer.
Yeah. It
It's
adds
very
up really
expensive.
quick, for sure. And that's where the business side comes into play. For me, I'm so focused on the business side that sometimes I don't put the dedication into perfecting the skill of the driving. Fortunately, being always involved in sports, I'm good with coaching. I take in a lot of knowledge, I absorb like a sponge, and I kind of apply a lot of things quickly on the track. But, because I am limited to the amount of laps I do, someone could, my brother gives me a piece of advice, or another pro driver gives me a piece of advice. I'm trusting them because, if that doesn't work, I'm throwing away a potential lap, and I only get so many of them. So you really have to learn how to adapt quickly on the spot with drifting. And fortunately, we drive all over the world. We drive all over the United States for the circuit that I do, and the tracks aren't changing drastically, but they are changing. Sometimes they'll add walls instead of it just being an open, end of the track. Sometimes they'll say instead of an outside clipping point, we're going to change this towards an inside clipping point. In Utah this year, they changed our run-up, so we were entering around 70 miles an hour, whereas 2 years prior to that, we were entering at 120. So that's a big difference when it comes to technique, and the muscle memory is never the same when the tracks are changing.
Yeah. So, Brandon, your brother's racing the pro class. You racing pro spec, and your younger brother is going to race against you next year, right?
Yeah, so my 13-year-old brother is now officially the youngest licensed Formula Drifter driver. And there's 4 ranks.
The whole family is racing Formula Drift.
There's 4 ranks in drifting. You have grassroots level, then you have pro-am level, pro spec level, and then pro. So Cameron just won pro-am championship, so now he's licensed to go pro spec. So he'll be driving against me, and that just gives me more motivation.
Oh yeah, you're not gonna let him beat you.
No.
That's awesome. Do you think just having, your brothers, do you think that pushes you to learn faster and wanting to learn more?
Definitely. We all get to learn from each other's mistakes, and it's not like I just have one person to learn from. The community of drifting is so open-armed, and I've established the respect as a female driver. Not just a female driver. I've established the respect of a driver there.
Yep.
So everyone kind of opens their arms to me, teaches me things. I have a very cool support system, but I'm sure, as you know, being in a male-dominated industry, it takes time to establish the respect as a driver or to establish the respect as just an athlete in that industry.
You're doing great. You don't need to worry about that. Also, I wanted to tell us about your Extreme experience.
Oh, geez. So I had the opportunity to go race in an electric racing series. And with the world and how it is these
off-road,
days,
right?
Yep, it's an off-road electric racing series. Let me tell you, though, when I got the phone call to go do that, I was so pumped because, like I said, the transition from off-road to drifting was a little devastating for me. But I still love drifting. I absolutely love drifting. However, off-road racing was a peace of mind when I got that phone call to go race for Chip Ganassi Racing and the Extreme E Series. And also, there was a lot of development behind that. We're developing electric racing. It's an all-wheel drive electric rally car. There's so many cool things that I got to do working with the engineers there. And we weren't just, racing electric rally cars. We were also traveling the world. I went to Saudi Arabia. I went to Scotland, Italy, Chile, these remote locations. And we got to experience the culture there as well as a driver, which was super cool. Every single team had a male and female driver, so it was very equality-based. My pay was just as much as the male driver. Not only that, but we also focused on the sustainability side of things. We got to learn about the culture there. We got to learn about the environment there. We had these big legacy projects where we would go maybe plant trees or do wildlife, establish the wildlife in an area that maybe has been deserted or a natural disaster happened. So it was more than just a racing series, but that was a very awesome opportunity.
That's cool. So nitro cross, off-road racing, Formula Drift, what's next?
I would say if I looking into what I want to do. I just want to be known as an international racing driver.
Just want to race anything, huh?
I think a huge part of that is not only the racing side of things and being competitive, but building the personal brand is huge for me. I want to do big video projects. I want to build cool cars. I want to be known as an international racing driver. So
How are you going to find time to do all that? You're always gone. You're always traveling.
I'm ready to take drifting into Europe. So that's my next goal. My next goal is to take it overseas and continue working here in the United States on the program that I'm on. But yeah, also maybe some street racing, like the Porsche Cup. When am I gonna be your teammate?
I know, you can come race with me. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I got to drive in a Super Trofeo car recently in the Lamborghini, and we were at Sebring, and I had so much fun doing that because it's, traction the whole time.
Yeah, it's very different than all this stuff you do, and it's pretty cool. You should do it. Thanks again for coming to the Team Ignition Show. We're so excited to have you. So don't forget to like, subscribe, comment.
Next time on the Team Ignition Show.
She has aces. What? It worked out brilliantly. She's either gonna win a lot or lose a lot.